Uh, Gee, here we are again 2 years later. Thank you for coming. Candidates Forum, Fox Hill Neighborhood Associations. We have some really good people here for our candidates for City Council. We have Mark Stiggs, Alex Fish, Albert Vera, and Daniel Lee. And thank you all for coming. My name is Judy Sherman, and that's Paula Keating back there on the board, and Renee Bailey, is she around? Anyway, she's on the board somewhere. Right here. Oh, hi, how are you? Okay, very good. And this, as you have seen, is the New Song Church. Some of you may have been here for other occasions. But we always like to come here. They're really great to us. And the pastor, Edgerly, he just wants to say a few words, just to say hi, and then I'll just say a few words after him. So if you want to come up, Pastor. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Judy. Just have a quick 30-minute sermon for you. Actually, I just wanted to welcome all of you. It's a privilege to serve the Fox Hills Neighborhood Association in the city of Culver City by hosting this event. And if you need anything, we are in the back. If we can make you more comfortable, please let us know. And also, if you got one of these cards, they're on the table out there. We have a free movie night coming up on Saturday. If you don't have plans for Saturday night, come and have some pizza and popcorn on us, watch a movie, and have a little discussion afterwards. So hope you enjoy the forum tonight.
Thank you. He's great. You can keep clapping for Anna Roach and Ricky. They're back there. She always helps getting us all organized. Okay, great. We're going to have a moderator tonight from League of Women Voters, and her name is Elizabeth Ralston, and she is here. And she's going to go into the particulars how it's all going to roll tonight. I just wanted to say, though, that we have also Dale, who works with Ken Mand, and he is putting, it's called Culver City Live, and they are filming all the candidate forums. And if you go on Facebook, you might want to write Facebook, you just plug in Culver City Live and you can listen to candidate forums forever. Really, they've already done like 5 of them. And I think it's really actually very educational because there's things that maybe we won't cover tonight, even though we're going to be here for 5 hours. And also, but also you see how neighborhoods, what we have in common with neighborhoods, but also what is different. So which makes every neighborhood a little unique. So I think it's really a great thing to do that. I did want to mention a couple of other people. Gabby Monzon, raise your hand, Gabby. She works for the city clerk's office now, and she's in charge of all the voter. Culver City Counts, which is voter registration, all the voter information you would ever want and need. You may have seen her on the way in because she has a voter information table set out there. So on the way out too, you may want to pick up a couple of things. Let me just go over a couple of logistics. If you need the restroom, you go through this door and a sharp right for the women's and around the bend for the men. But it's all to the right, okay? There's an exit here, around the corner, and there's also an exit through there. I always like to say that. Cookies and water are there. Campaign information, you can pick up on the way out. We have a table when you go out to the left, so that's there. And that's one other couple of things I want to say. I did tell you about Culver City Live, which I think is really great. Just to really emphasize the fact that we all have to vote. If we don't vote, it's just not going to matter. There's no excuses anymore. We have so much information out there how to get voting. Make sure all your neighbors are voting. You can call it a voting watch instead of neighborhood watch. So you can really just make sure that everybody knows where to go for that. It's culvercity.org/voting, right? So /vote. So we're in good shape there. I do want to say that the voter outreach, even though, of course, it's been historically low, the last city council election, Fox Hills, actually, the voter turnout really went up. And if it wasn't the highest turnout, it was one of the highest. So we just got to keep it up. We just got to keep going better and better. So without any, I think I've talked enough. Oh, just to emphasize one other point. April 10th is the city council vote. April 10th. April 3rd is the special election for the state assembly seat. If you recall, Sebastian Ridley Thomas resigned. So just remember though, for the city council, it's April 10th. And if you need any more information about voting, Gabby, I'm sure, will be more than happy to oblige. So if there's not anything else, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Ralston, and she'll take it from there. She'll explain how everything will go. Thank you so much.
Hi, you hear me or is this on? No, no. I'm willing to do it without a mic.
Did you just turn the on?
It's on now? Wait, no. Oh, I gotta put it. Okay, thanks. Okay, well, welcome to all of you for joining us this evening's forum. The purpose of the forum is to assist you in selecting who you think is going to be the best representative on the Culver City Council.
But they can choose two.
Yes, two, exactly. Two out of these four gentlemen. I want to thank and commend the Fox Hills Neighborhood Association for organizing this event this evening. And also, my contact has been Renee Bailey, and it's been a real pleasure working with her. Now, let me explain how we'll be managing this evening so everybody gets the most out of having the candidates here. First, each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. Questions have been solicited in advance from people living in the community, and each question will be posed to each of the candidates. One thing to keep in mind, and you're probably all familiar with this is a forum, not a debate. In other words, the candidates won't be addressing each other, they will be addressing you, the audience. The order in which the candidates will respond, or actually, the person who will speak first was determined by a draw, and by coincidence, it is Mr. Tiggs at the end. So we'll start from the left, moving to the right, but after each question, we will start with. So there will be a number of questions. After each question, I will announce the time allotted for answering that question. In general, that's going to be 2 minutes. And Renee has agreed to time here. She will be watching her iPhone, I think, when there's 15 seconds left, and a red stop sign when you need to stop. But fortunately, I see that there's a clock right up there that you can look at to see how much time you're taking. And finally, I'd like to ask you not to applaud until we're done with all the questions, because having people applaud just takes time away from listening to the candidates. So now I think you can all see who is here tonight. Moving left to right, we have, actually I'm going to have to look, I have it memorized, Marcus Tiggs, Alex Fish, Albert Vera, and Daniel Lynn. So let's start with the opening statement. And you can go first, Mr. Tiggs.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus Tiggs. I'm running for City Council. I've been a resident of Culver City for about 26, 27 years. In addition to that, I've been extremely active in our great city. I was on the Planning Commission for 8 years, past chair. I still am on the Fiesta La Bayona Committee. I was a chair 2 years in a row, 2016 through 2017. The reason 2 years in a row, because no one else wanted to be chair. In addition to that, I'm on the Centennial Celebration Committee. I am the subcommittee chair for our time capsule. On top of that, I am also on the Citizen School Bond Oversight Committee, which makes sure the voter-approved bond monies are used properly. The reason I'm running for City Council is because I want to make a difference. I believe I've made a difference in those other committees, commissions that I've been involved in, Now I'm ready to make a difference for the whole city. I am a lawyer. That's what I do for a living. I'm also a combat veteran and retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. I was a commander and I've been a staff officer in various times in my career. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hello, Fox Hills. Thank you for putting on this event tonight, and my name is Alex Fish. I'm the chair of the Culver City Committee on Homelessness. I've been on the committee for about 3 years. We, a couple years ago, saw the county put out an interesting and more detailed than most plans, plan to combat homelessness, because it's obviously growing. We have 57,000 homeless people on the streets. In the committee, we latched onto that. We started to design programs with staff that were budgeted in last year's budget to put people back into homes, to prevent families from getting from losing their homes, and to keep seniors in their homes as they age with a senior life safety upgrade program. So I've got experience actually delivering policy from abstract concepts. We also developed an ordinance that I wrote personally to provide economic opportunities for people getting off the streets and back into the workforce, and disabled veteran-owned businesses and small local businesses. We're also now developing a program to incentivize landlords to house housing choice tenants. So my experience is mostly in making abstract policy real for Culver City, and I just see so much opportunity because my background is also as a lawyer. I was a shareholder at a corporate law firm for a number of years. Now I work in the California Attorney General's office doing environmental enforcement work. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's okay? Yeah. All right, first of all, I'd like to thank New Song Church for hosting the event, the Fox Hills Neighborhood Association, Elizabeth for being our moderator. My name is Albert Vera. I was born and raised in Culver City. I own and operate Sorrento Italian Market. My civic involvement as of this date so far has been, I was on the landlord mediation tenant board. I'm currently a civil service commissioner. I'm on the board of directors for the YMCA, also on the board for the Exchange Club. But more importantly, I'm on the board of directors for the Upward Bound House, which is a great organization where we do rapid rehousing for families and children, families with children that for whatever reason have lost their way and for living paycheck to paycheck or are out of a house. We get them rapid rehousing, we get them job skills, we do whatever it takes to get them back into permanent housing. I'm running for Culver City because I'm passionate about my city. I love the city that I was born in and I grew up in, and through the tradition of service that was instilled in me from my parents, I sort of want to pass that on and pass on my service and willingness to work hard for the city that I so much love. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Daniel Lee and I'm running for City Council here in Culver City. I've lived in the city for the last 15 years. In that time I've served on the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee for the last 7 years. In that time I was the chair. I've also been a volunteer at El Rincon Elementary through the Young Storytellers program for the last 14 years. I've also worked with groups such as Culver City Community Coalition on various issues. In regards to sustainability, supported the efforts of Bayona Creek Renaissance, supported the efforts of Culver City Action Network, and have been an active member of the Sierra Club Clean Break Committee, which has been working on a number of different environmental issues in Culver City for quite some time. My platform focuses on the environment, accountability and fairness. The environment in particular, because we're talking about the Inglewood oil field and on long-term sustainability and climate resilience of the city. Accountability, because we want to make sure that if our city passes a particular policy, or in the case of the Inglewood oil field, specific regulations, that we make sure that those regulations are adhered to. But fairness in the context of we want to make sure that everyone in the city is counted and that their opinions are appreciated. Specifically in the context of Fox Hills, we want to make sure that we are not taking revenue from this area without making sure that the residents feel fully represented.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we will begin with the questions which members of the community have submitted. Question number 1. Residents of Fox Hills are concerned about parking and traffic-related safety issues such as speeding. What solutions do you propose to address these issues in Culver City, especially when the city is trying to increase housing? And we will begin with Mr. Fish.
Okay, we got it. It's a great question for Fox Hills, obviously. We have a lot going on with this, including things that the city has talked about doing and not done. Just last July, I think, your board, this association, had a meeting with Gabe Garcia where a number of improvements that would have provided a little bit more parking and a little bit slower traffic on some of the, what I understand is called the Speedway, Green Valley Circle, especially between Bristol and Buckingham. That was promised, I think, at the end of last year, to be done by the end of last year, and I didn't see it as I came in here. So there's a responsiveness issue even in the plans that are in the works, and I don't know if that plan was universally accepted. Sometimes removing lanes of traffic is a little controversial. To me, it makes a ton of sense on Green Valley Circle. You've got, throughout your neighborhood, lots of speedways, lots of places where it looks inviting to drive very fast. And so traffic safety, I think, is a big issue here. And I was having a conversation with someone who said, no, the streets are safe, and from this neighborhood, and within 4 hours of that conversation, somebody was struck, a pedestrian was struck. So I think, reducing the speeds through design, making the streets not look like highways, but making them look like the neighborhood streets that they are in your community is an important priority. Controlling the intersections on Buckingham and Sumner, and where there was an accident, and Kensington, for example, protecting people as they cross to recreation. Because that whole reimagined Fox Hills concept isn't going to make a lot of sense if you can't safely get to the walkable part of your neighborhood. Reimagined Fox Hills seems like a kernel of something to serve this community well, because the future of dealing with traffic, I think, is to provide your needs as frequently as possible close at home, so that you're not having to drive to Marina Del Rey to shop. So that's, I think, part of the future. Traffic in general, there's already in this year's budget and prior year's budget a traffic control automation plan. I may have fouled up what it's called, but the idea of better timing the signals, it's already in the works. I think we'll continue to do the best we can, but ultimately the secret, I think, is to bring your needs closer to you. Thank you.
Mr. Vera?
I think traffic and parking is an issue that's countywide, but in this area specifically, I think what we really need to do is take a look at our streets and implement some measures, whether it be speed bumps, whether it be stop signs. We need something to slow traffic down. This place it's amazing. The other night we were up here and just trying to make a U-turn on one of the streets is like you're taking your life in your hands. So we really need the city to be active and take an active part. We've been talking about this for years and years up here. It seems a topic of discussion in this area, and nothing seems to be done. But I think the city really needs to look into it. Let's start implementing some programs where we put stop signs in, we put speed bumps in. But more importantly, let's design a neighborhood where it is walkable. The city talked about walkability. If we're not careful with the design and what we put in this area in terms of development, we're going to take that walkability and throw it right out the window. So we need to be really cautious. We need to be smart about our development and be really smart about our development and try to create the most walkable community that we can possibly have.
I think in terms of traffic, I'd like to reference something that I've brought up at a number of different forums. One part of traffic that's very applicable to Culver City at the moment is the notion of development and traffic influenced by development. I think in all of the areas of our city, including Fox Hills, we need to have a development timeline that takes into account not only the development happening in Fox Hills, but the development happening, for instance, in Playa Vista, possibly even in Inglewood and other places where there are thoroughfares that pour into Culver City and into Fox Hills specifically, and try to pace out our development so that there aren't multiple projects happening in multiple jurisdictions at the same time. When it comes to parking, hear me talk in many other neighborhoods. You will hear me talk about being a staunch advocate of reduced parking requirements for developments that are close to transit, such as the Culver City Metro Station. For a place like Fox Hills, I'm not sure if those reduced parking requirements should be applicable at the current moment until we actually put in more bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that makes the streets in Fox Hills more safe and more walkable. Specifically, I would advocate for a sharp increase in crosswalks and metered crosswalks and stoplights in certain areas to reduce both the speed of traffic, but to increase the safety that particular pedestrians or bicyclists might feel going around the neighborhood. I think it's disingenuous to ask people in Fox Hills to slow traffic by walking more and biking more without giving them the infrastructure for them to do so. So in that vein, I would advocate for for development policy that has a holistic view of traffic, but for local policy that takes the neighborhood interest at heart.
It's correct. Obviously, traffic is a regional issue. However, I'm dismayed that 2+ years ago we were talking about the same thing as far as the speedway in Green Valley, as far as the safety issues on that street and the other streets within Fox Hills. At some point, we have to say enough is enough. Something has to be done. We can talk about people walking, we can talk about people cycling. Those modalities are fantastic, but that's not helping you right now. What I would propose is, with the adaptive traffic control signals, those are the computerized signals, essentially, that gives real-time data and can adjust the signal controls with sensors in the street determining how they should adjust the timing of the signal, versus what we have right now, for the most part, in most of the 160 some odd controlled intersections in Culver City, is they're timed and they do it at a certain time frame. That's that. That doesn't work now. The low tech is traffic control officers. I've been mentioning this, and I'm going to keep mentioning it until someone tells me I'm completely out of my mind. Some of these intersections would benefit with a traffic control officer. I'm not saying permanent, but what I am saying is during the peak hours to move this traffic along. Another eye. Real-time traffic data. I've mentioned Uber movements. These are state-of-the-art things. We're in the 21st century. So maybe we should start leveraging some of that stuff. Yeah, it'll take a little bit of time, but in the meantime, let's have the low-tech things. As far as parking, we talked about parking a lot before as well. Private-public partnerships, that's been discussed, but where is that? It's nowhere. At some point, we need to start moving on things for your benefit because it benefits the whole city.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, the second question we have is, what are your views regarding the upcoming implementation of Proposition 64, that's the marijuana legalization initiative in Culver City? Please specify any challenges and/or benefits you foresee when implemented. And do you, as part of your answer, do you support or oppose Proposition A? So this time we'll start with Mr. Vera.
I believe the challenge is coming with the legalization of marijuana, especially with Culver City. We want to put 3 sort of brick and mortar shops in our city. I think inherently it's a risky business. We got companies who are dealing primarily in all cash, and it brings sort of an element into the neighborhood that I don't know that I really welcome into Culver City. I don't think that our community needs that. We can really accomplish the same effects with delivery only. In terms of the taxation on the cultivation and cultivation, science, and I think there's 4 different modes. But anyway, in terms of the taxation, we can use that tax money, put it into the general fund, and let us pay into our looming budget, our pension fund that we have. I'm not a big proponent of legalization of marijuana in terms of dispensaries in the city. I spoke up about it against. I spoke against it at our council meeting. I said inherently, I think it brings in an element to the neighborhood that I don't particularly care for.
I'm a strong proponent of the legalization of marijuana in general, and I think the process that our city council took when it was thinking about determining both the regulations and locations for marijuana, legal marijuana dispensaries in Culver City, frankly, was very well done. From one perspective, it took into consideration the comments of residents that were concerned about these dispensaries being located near parks or schools. On a secondary level, it took into consideration the concerns of specifically Fox Hills residents about the concentration of marijuana dispensaries in Fox Hills, and not to include just dispensaries, but dispensaries, warehouse locations, making sure that all of those locations are not in Fox Hills. The fact that we only have 3 dispensaries that could possibly be approved makes me think that the conflicting opinions of all our residents have been sufficiently considered. I think to some degree there is too much of a conversation about the threats of legal marijuana and not enough conversation about the results of the war on drugs on communities of color and low-income communities. And I think we need to think about both of those when we think about these policies, and not just how our individual neighborhoods have been affected, because frankly, marijuana dispensaries have been operable on the edges of Culver City for over a decade. So if we saw many ill effects, we would be seeing them right now.
Initially, I struggled with the council as far as how they were dealing with the retail sale of cannabis in our city. Initially, I thought that's just going to bring a whole bunch of money to our city. That's great. Regulate the heck out of them. First time I went to a dispensary was for a tour. That was a few months ago, and I was surprised. It looked like an Apple store, to be quite frank with you. Then, as far as when the city started going through its warp speed in getting these regulations on the books, I mean, imagine 8 months for this, a complex issue, but we talked earlier about traffic, and we still don't have any resolution after 2 years plus. So, even though there's 3 dispensary retail possible locations, if you will, it's whose backyard is that going to be in? Does the average person want a dispensary down the street from their house? Maybe not. Maybe some are okay with it. But what I did notice is some people, not all, but some people that were very much against it, when they were when the map showed close to their house, they spoke up loud, and then later on the map didn't have it close to their house. They were missing in action. We are in a community, so what affects you affects me in Rancho Higuera. So I think the way the council spent a lot of time and energy on it, however, I think more time could have been spent as far as getting more input from the communities that are impacted on the marijuana. As far as the money, revenue coming into the city, time is really going to tell, because it costs money to enforce, to regulate, and things of that nature. I don't know yet what the impact's going to be on our police. We're going to have to see, and then we may need to make adjustments.
I've been a homeowner in Culver City for 13 years, and I'm a father of 2 children who are CCUSD students. My home is not far from, it's in my backyard, would be permitted, testing, distribution, and manufacture, I believe. But it probably won't happen because it's full of really cool web something kids. But I think that the city council had a good process. It was fast, but really probably more ordinance making. There was a lot of time that was spent in subcommittee. There was a lot of opportunity for public comment, and there was a lot of public comment from the most interested people. Granted, a lot of the people who participated were lobbyists for the cannabis industry, but many concerned citizens, members of the Planning Commission tracked it all the way. So I think the City Council did a good job of striking all the competing balancing interests and moving forward. The key for us is with cannabis legalization, which I strongly support too. I think there was a complete failure of the war on drugs, and if I did have to do one thing over with the regulations, I would provide an opportunity for people who were convicted of nonviolent cannabis-related crimes to be business owners. It seems a little unjust that they're not. But I would follow the advice of public health professionals and make sure that we destigmatize this drug, this purchase of this drug, but not normalize it. It's good that there are 3 locations that the city is going to know where these transactions are happening. Those locations will only be cited after conditional use permit process, so there will be more opportunity for public comment with each individual dispensary. We'll have 3 places where we know that marijuana is being sold. Today, as we stand here, there's probably 1,000 places in Culver City that we don't know where it's being sold, and those are all cash businesses too, with a lot less reputability. So I think it's been a good process. It's a bit of a brave new world. I admit that we're ahead of other cities, but I'm optimistic.
I noticed that right up there, they're setting the time for when you start. So keep an eye on it, but you're doing well. Okay, on to question number 3. HSH Management's proposal for the Fox Hills Plaza is to change the zoning from commercial to planned development for a mixed-use project with 762 residential units as well as retail space. I'm hoping these numbers are correct. The plan is for 960 parking spaces for all uses, employees, residents, shoppers, and guests. The proposed density is double the requirement for units per acre for mixed use, which is 50 units per acre. If you were on city council right now and this plan were presented to you, how would you vote? And what, if anything, would you like to see changed? And we will begin with you.
Well, if I was on city council at the present moment, one of the first things that I would do is try to have a few meetings with a diverse mix of people from Fox Hills, because I've had the opportunity to come to one of the development meetings with this developer, and my impressions from that meeting is that by and large the concerns of people from Fox Hills have not been listened to or incorporated into the plan. I think in particular the density of the plan and the desire of people in Fox Hills to see a much smaller density, and desire of others, frankly, to not see the development move forward at all, have not been incorporated to some degree. And I know there is a delicate interplay between residential and business, but I think there could be a plan that seriously advocates for development that still remains mixed use, that retains the retail space that is there right now, but that is, say, 200 units or 250 units. I think this is something that would not satisfy, frankly, everyone in Fox Hills. No plan will. But I do think I would advocate for a plan, and I would leave it up to the developer to some degree, that tried to more actively integrate the concerns of both the residents and the businesses that are currently operative in that place into their plan. And I would not want to vote yes or no without seeing a real plan that really incorporated those concerns.
Adding 700 plus doors or units to Fox Hills, which happens to be the most dense area in Culver City, is problematic for me. I'll explain to you why it's problematic for me. I can't say what I'm going to vote, how I'm going to vote. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you how I'm thinking this out. I haven't seen exactly what the developer has submitted. Number one, Fox Hills, again, you're real dense. You got traffic problems that are so significant, which we discussed earlier. You add 750 units, how many more cars are you going to add to this problem? Everyone is not walking, everyone is not cycling. We have issues in Fox Hills that directly impact you, but impacts our whole city. With a project of this magnitude, what mitigation measures are they going to come up? Is the developer going to come up with? Is it restriping a lane? Is it extending a turn pocket? Is it having one smart control signal? How are they going to deal with the increased traffic on your streets? I see it as problematic. I see it as problematic. That doesn't mean that this commercial area is never going to be developed. I'm not saying that. At some point, there has to be a use that benefits you. It's zoned commercial. That's neighborhood serving commercial. You have low-story buildings. At some point, if you have a project like this, where are you going to go to get your prescriptions filled? Where are you going to go for the cleaners? Yeah, you can go to the Fox Hills Mall. You can do that. But this is your community, and I think it's just too many people in this project.
At the risk, because there are so many issues in this, I'm going to be long-winded, so I'll give the short answer first, which is that I can't support the project as it's been presented to your community so far, and I think the process has been very flawed. The developer got off on the wrong foot, and that makes things very difficult. But this project lies at the intersection of several interesting problems. One is we keep talking about units, and I've heard people at the community, I've been to 2 of the community meetings, I only missed the one that was 4 days before Christmas, so I understand the community's sentiments, and I really think the developer failed to appreciate context and sense of place and community, which is a problem anytime you're going to redevelop 6.5 acres. 6.5 acres, you're making a big bet. You're saying, we've got it right. We know best for the next 100 years. My neighborhood is experiencing that right now. We really build healthy, strong cities when we grow incrementally. It's very hard to do that 6.5 acres at a time right in the middle of the city. That said, we need houses. It's not an accident. I've heard people scoff at the idea of building homes in this project. I've heard people laugh at the word homes, but we need homes for people. We've got 57,000 people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles County. That's not an accident. There's not all of a sudden a rash of mental illness. This is a lack of homes. Now, I don't support a giant installation of 700 homes on this site either. The site needs to build your community. It needs to serve you. It needs to fit in. It can't just be plopped down like an alien thing, which I think is what's been presented so far. I really would prefer that this were in the context of the general plan process that's coming up, because Fox Hills has an equity deficit. For a long time, your community has been planned on you. And I understand the suspicion of people coming in because other parts of the city are much less dense. And we need to make sure that when we do add homes, that it's equitable.
So I worry about this project. If I were on council right now, there's no way I could approve this project. To have 700 plus units, 20,000 square feet of retail with a limited amount of parking, and granted being bundled parking, what I worry is parking in this neighborhood is already horrific. So you're going to force people now to start parking on the streets. They're going to start parking in the mall parking lot. Parking is going to be outrageous. We talk about a walkable community. This is sort of going the other direction to me. We want a walkable community. We want someplace where we can go to a grocery store. There is no grocery store here. You have to hop in your car, drive 1.5 miles to the nearest grocery store. Let's create a center that's community oriented. Let's create a center where we can walk there. We can take our kids there. Maybe have a green space out in front, some kind of park space, but this amount of units in this spot is no way. Our infrastructure, for one, our sewer system is already aging and leaking up here. We put this kind of demand on our sewer system, it'd be catastrophic. Our power grid is already maxed out. We really need to think long and hard about this project altogether, but let's focus more on the community. What the development can do for the community, and focus all our development really around that, and create a truly walkable neighborhood.
Okay, moving on. The next question is, what proposals would you make or support so that present renters in Culver City will not be pushed out due to excessive rent increases? And we will begin with Mr. Tiggs.
So the present renters.
Present renters, yes.
Okay.
Current renters.
Okay, got that. I would first look at, first of all, I would set up, if you will, a stakeholder roundtable. That means that would include renters, property managers, and other city staff from the housing department. And let's see where the problem lies. We hear a lot about rents just going up, these crazy numbers, people have to move out. There are property owners that rent properties that have their rents that are below the median amount of rents in our city, in LA County, if you will. The reason their rents are below is because they want to keep that tenant, because that tenant has been living there for a long time and that tenant pays. I know it's not rent control, but it leads to what people talk about rent control. And I've told people before, and I'll say it now, I have trouble with rent control. As it stands, when we talk about rent control, the reality is rent control right now cannot impact a single-family home, cannot impact a condominium, cannot impact a property that was built after 1995. So there's not a whole, we just talk about those things. We also need to look at it in the sense that short-term rentals, that's taking away some of the stock. Council's discussing maybe having a 90-day limit. When you do a 90-day limit, what are those seniors going to do who are relying on that income? My point being that I'm trying to make is, instead of looking at these little issues as discrete issues, we need to look at them collectively.
Well, the only way to deal with rents long-term is housing supply at all income levels, diverse and abundant housing, and that's the bigger question that we're going to address in the general plan, but not with HSH. It's on the general plan. I actually think that the key stakeholders in negotiating something, call it rent stabilization 3.0 or something, is really renters, landlords, and housing advocates. Because the problem with the sort of first generation of rent control, which you see in New York, is that it had a very hard cap, and New York had the resources to provide a lot of public, social housing, New York has a very complicated housing market. Problem with rent control 2.0, which you see in Santa Monica, Los Angeles, San Francisco, is that a whole lot of unintended consequences, and there's always winners and losers. The housing market is not very free as it is. Prop 13 is a constraint. There's other constraints that make the housing market very complicated and not exactly a free market. But when there was just a study by two Stanford economists in studying with an incredible data set, and they tracked basically every resident in San Francisco for decades, and they were able to tell where they moved throughout the United States, what the rent was. Just an incredible piece of work. But there were the expected winners and losers, but there were some unexpected things. Rent control encourages condo conversions. It encourages gentrification. So people were pushed out as landlords took over something and turned it into something for sale. You long-term would see people who were in rent-stabilized housing moving throughout their life into lower socioeconomic neighborhoods perpetually. And the major beneficiaries were people who happened to get in early and stay a long time. So we haven't gotten it right yet. And I respect that there are plenty of small landlords in Culver City that need to refinance and are making their living with this, but we need to find some solution. We need to be creative, or else we're going to get rage at the ballot box by renters.
We do need housing. Unfortunately, we don't have the land for housing. We have to really maintain what we have. I think inherently rent control doesn't work. It provides a disincentive, I believe, for landlords really to neglect their property. And provides a level of bullying as well. I'm in fear if we enact something like rent control in Culver City, which still is lowest rent compared to Santa Monica and LA, who do have rent control. As a landlord, if somebody says rent control is coming in, I'm in fear the landlord is going to boost their rent right out of the market rate and force that person out of the house so they have the highest possible rent coming in. So I think we really need to look deeper into it. We need to work with the housing department, with Tevez Barnes, and really create something where it's safe, where it provides a level of protection both for the landlord and for the tenant, where we can work together. And what that is, I don't know, but I think bringing in all the experts and really having a roundtable and discussing our options and what would work for everyone and provide everyone a level of protection is the way to go.
I think rent control has been used for many years, at least since I've been a resident of Culver City and a renter of 15 years, as volatile political football to get people not to do anything, to help people do anything around affordable housing. We have millions of dollars from the redevelopment agencies many years ago that we could have used to build affordable housing, but there was a lack of political will to do so. This is the same issue that we're facing at the current moment in Culver City. There's a lack of political will to do something to help renters. So my suggestion is to stop calling it rent control, to start talking about a renter's bill of rights, so that in a particular context, if your rent is raised by 3% or 10% per year, that's acceptable. You can have, 60 days to leave. But if your rent is raised by 100% or 200 or 300%, then other protections should kick in, because that's unreasonable no matter who you are. Particularly in the context of our city, we have a large population of aged people who are on a fixed income, for whom even a raise in the rent of 25% would kick them out of their house effectively. We need to provide for them. Similarly, we have a large number of younger people who actually want to live near their parents who cannot do so. We need to protect them. We need to put protections in place so that, one, there is enough housing stock for people to consider renting or staying as renters in Culver City. But once they're here, we need protections so that they know if their rent is raised, one, it'll only be by a certain percent, but two, if it's by a larger percent, they will have a larger amount of time to do the things that they need to do to make sure that their family is safely housed.
Okay, thank you. Now, here's a more free-form question. What do you see as Culver City's single most important issue today? Single most important challenge facing Culver City? And what would you see as a possible solution to that challenge?
I think the one thing that I can promise, and it happens to be the ability to deal really well with the single most pressing and sort of timely challenge, which is regulating the Inglewood oil field effectively right now. Obviously, it's been there for almost 100 years, but the City Council has spent a number of years putting together some pretty well thought out regulations in draft form. The next council is going to consider those. I spent my first 11 years, I clerked for the Ninth Circuit out of law school. I was top 10 at UCLA. I worked at a corporate firm for a number of years, was a partner there, and now I do environmental enforcement work. I have sued oil companies. I've dealt with industrial end-of-life issues. And oil companies don't close up and hand over their cleanup plan and a big check. They simply run away with the money. They close up. So in the near term, we need to regulate very carefully to protect our residents. We need a buffer zone that's supported by science between oil production facilities and residents. We need to mandate that there will be no new wells without the plugging and abandonment of an old well, so no net new wells. And we need to ban fracking and other enhanced oil techniques. At the same time, for the more mid to long term, we need to get assurances that the oil company will provide financially for the cleanup at the end of its life, and we need to start to think about what the end of the oil fields, how we bring about the end of drilling in our neighborhoods. And I think I'm uniquely well qualified and I think it's a very timely issue.
You can only pick one challenge, and there's so many to choose from. Okay. I think it's housing and mobility sort of go hand in hand. We really need to provide housing. We need to be smart about our development and housing. So we need to go to our developers and see what they can develop for us in terms of mixed usage, where we provide a level of retail and housing, where we really promote that walkable neighborhood that we're all talking about. In hand in hand with that, mobility. You know, what can the developer, what can the city provide in terms of bike sharing, ride sharing, shuttle services, off-site parking, things that we can really promote where we take traffic off of our streets and makes it easier for us to get from point A to point B. With the lane diets and the road diets and whatnot, the cars aren't going to disappear, quite frankly. No matter what we do, unfortunately, they're going to be here. We need to plan for the future, correct, in terms of what the next best way of mobility is. But for now, we have to deal with what we have. We have to deal with the traffic that's out on the street, and the best way to really manage that. You know, I would love to see a full-time, either a flex lane or a dedicated bus lane down major thoroughfares of the Sepulveda to Washington. You know, I think the more reliable the system, the more people are apt to use it. The more people start using the system, hopefully that will force them out of their cars. You know, at the end of bus lines, we can have ride-sharing programs, but the ride-sharing programs I'd love to see where it's linked. So we can ride our bike to Santa Monica and park it there, where, you know, it's an all-regional, so it's really part of a complete and master system. Thank you.
So a lot of people make the statement that a budget is a statement of values, whether you're an organization or a city government or a national government. In a similar way, our general plan is the roadmap for our future. And a lot of the issues that my fellow candidates have brought up to answer this question are actually subsumed within our general plan. I come from an environmental background. The environment, and particularly environmental justice, are my passions. But in the context of Culver City, the most significant issue that we face at the current moment is what are going to be the priorities in our general plan, and what stakeholders within the city, beyond the city council and the city staff, are going to be there to contribute to that prioritization. My personal priorities, of course, would be very much around what are our regulations going to be for the Inglewood oil field, but also for any type of oil and gas exploration or any type of energy production, also sustainable development in general, both for the requirements that we'll have from new housing developments, new individual houses, but also business developments. But in the long term, do we have a climate resilience plan? Do we have a sustainability plan? What are the requirements in terms of community benefit that we're going to ask from the businesses that come into Culver City that we don't know about? Not the Apples, not the Amazons. Is our current model of community benefit enough? Is the community getting enough, both financially in terms of sustainability, in terms of long-term benefit? And all of these things are subsumed by our general plan. So I think that's the most important issue because it tackles both our environmental issues, our housing issues, and also the financial issues in terms of development and sustainability. Thank you.
For the most part, being last is good, but I've been jotting down notes, and all the challenges that my colleagues up here came up with, they're great. And so I'm going to choose something separate and distinct. It's dollars and cents. My concern, which I think is a big challenge, can be a huge challenge for us, is the potential sunset of Measure Y. As most of you know, Measure Y was a half-cent sales tax increase to fill the void when we lost, or all cities in California lost their redevelopment agencies. We all moved to Culver City for various reasons, but the common core reasons are you feel safe, we got great schools, we have clean parks, we have trafficable, we have roads that are repaired. All this costs money. Our general fund is what kind of keeps us happy, helps us with our quality of life. It's that engine. General fund is about $120 million, of which about half of it goes to public safety. With Measure Y, in the sunset in 2020, I'm not going to make an assumption that all the voters are going to say, yes, we're going to do it again. Yes, we want to keep this in perpetuity. Because if it doesn't happen, we're going to have some definite problems. We want to maintain the level of service that we have. We want to improve the level of service that we have. An economy doesn't always have an upward trend. At some point, it has a downward trend. We need to look at additional sources of revenue for our city and keep our eyes open.
Okay, thank you very much. Now here comes a question that maybe you don't want to answer. Have you received any campaign contributions from developers? If so, which developers? And if not, will you accept developer contributions to your campaign? I think you're first, Mr. Vera.
No, I have not, and no, I will not. I'm proud to say all my donations have really been through residents, through customers of the store, through friends and family. So I have not received donations from developers, and I won't, or oil.
Yes, and I'll be brief. I received a campaign contribution from a developer, I believe in December. My campaign quickly returned the contribution. We will not be accepting campaign contributions from developers or oil operators going forward. Thank you.
I too received a contribution from a developer. I have not given the money back. One reason is I've been trying to contact the developer and find out, why did you give me the money? But let's look at it this way. Contributions come from all over the place. And no, I'm not going to take money from an oil operator. No, I'm not going to take money from HSN, if you will. Donating money to my campaign does not mean I owe you anything, because you are the voters. I owe it to you. I don't make decisions based on who gave me the money. I understand it's a topic that we look at and say, if you took money from a developer, you're in the pockets of the developer. I don't think that's the case. I know that's not the case for me. Probably after I talk to the developer and find out exactly what's what, maybe I'll give it back, maybe I won't. Or maybe I'll just say, look, you gave me the money, great. I don't have a whole bunch of money in my campaign, and I'm kind of tired of self-funding, so you're not going to get anything. I'm going to still vote the way I vote, looking out for the best interest of you, the residents. You're the voters. The developers don't vote. Thank you.
I received an unsolicited donation of $500 from Regency Center. I didn't realize I called him today, actually. I received it some time ago, but didn't realize right away that it was a developer. It said investments at the end. I had a great conversation with someone at the door, and I guess I thought I was a little better at the door than I was. It was not the gentleman who I met that day, but in fact somebody who's has an active development here in Culver City. I'm returning it. I'm not accepting money from developers, whether they're active in Culver City or not, despite having founded a nonprofit that has research field schools in 22 countries, 45 different field schools around the world, sitting on the board, founding an organization with a guy who's a developer. I'm not even accepting in-kind donations from developers. So, I need to return the money, Regency Center. I have nothing against him. I wanted to call him too and just let him know I'm not accepting it. Nothing. You're not a bad person, but you need to know that your council members respond to you. I will say that my number one contributors for several months were my mom and dad, so I also answer to them. And I am not taking, large outside corporate money. And to clarify what that means, I am accepting a $500 donation from the Culver Hotel because I view them as a critical part of the community, even though they have interests that are sometimes compete with neighborhood interests. I think most people consider Culver Hotel to be a neighbor in some respects. There's also, it might be organized as a PAC. I might be accepting some PAC money. With the Sierra Club's endorsement came a small financial contribution, which I would never return. I value that endorsement immensely. Thank you.
Okay, and the final question we'll have before we go on to closing statements. I think some of you have dealt with this in some ways, but we can recap. With the record number of homeless in Los Angeles, what strategies would you propose to address this issue in Culver City? And I think we are at...
Well, I think our homelessness committee has been doing a great job in terms of identifying strategies to use to address the homelessness issue. I think if you've been a homelessness advocate in any way, shape, or form, if you've had a concern around mental health, substance abuse, or just people being on the street, if you look into the research, you know that most of the research supports housing first. And I think from a housing first perspective, my personal opinion is that if there's a possibility for Culver City to do more, to set aside a fund to do more, as LA County did with Measure HHH and LA City did with Measure H, to actually build supportive housing, I would be an advocate for that specifically in Culver City. As an activist, I've specifically slept out with homeless individuals and unhoused individuals on Skid Row a number of years to try to help them combat some of the harassment they get from particular areas of law enforcement and some people in downtown Los Angeles. So I know some of the things that they deal with by specifically being on the street. And a lot of those things can at least initially be addressed just by being in a place that is their own. So if there is a way for Culver City to do that, if we as a city approved a tax or a half-cent tax or quarter-cent tax or some other derivative, I would be in favor of trying to actually find a place to really provide homeless services and homeless housing here in Culver City, because that is, from a research perspective, the most effective way of actually addressing the issue.
Homelessness, it's a huge problem. LA City as well as LA County, there's a lot more money coming in to tackle this challenge. The challenge impacts all of us, believe it or not. I talked earlier about our quality of life. I talked about public safety. The impact of having an increased homeless population in our city, it takes away the resources, the police resources, that the police officers could be handling a different call. So in other words, if a business owner calls and says, there's a homeless person here, they're waving their hand or waving their fist, police department is going to dispatch a patrol car to deal with that. At some point, they might have to take them to the hospital. So that's one car off the street. So this is a huge problem. I also look at it from when I was a planning commissioner, and sometimes we need to do some internal thought. Upward Bound House needed entitlements, transitional housing. Great, we didn't have any transitional housing places in Culver City. NIMBYism was just a max. I don't want them there. I don't want them here. So when we talk about having homeless housing in Culver City, we need to be honest with ourselves. Do we really want it? And if we do, can it be down the street from your house? Can it be down the street from my house? Instead of just talking about it, let's do something. If we don't want it, doesn't sound good, but we got to be honest with ourselves. We have so many issues. So let's use the funds, help the homeless the best we can, but we do need to be honest with ourselves, folks.
2 minutes. So obviously I've already been very active on this issue. In the Committee on Homelessness, my colleagues have been amazing. We've done a ton of work in a small amount of time. And just yesterday I was running with one of the people who's working in the executive office of LA County. Found out that Measure H is actually $355 million per year instead of the $325 that was predicted, so yay. But she acknowledged that Culver City is on the forefront of this, so we should be proud. I think right now this city understands the housing first model, and people understand that this is a crisis level epidemic. When you go out and you see shanty towns, people know this isn't right. This isn't the California that I want. So I want to continue the work that we've done on the Homelessness Committee. I want to expand the rapid rehousing program that we're working on starting. We're partnering with the county, getting Measure H money in to fund that. We also are getting approximately $2 million a year back for the next approximately 15 years from the redevelopment money that we didn't spend. We need to deploy that to build subsidized housing. And I think that given how long we've taken, we didn't spend that money with our political will, as Daniel said, that we should really be looking at ways to partner with the county to get money up front now, secured, the repayment of which would be secured by the $2 million coming from the State Department of Finance, and acquire a property here in Culver City where services will be provided and the neighborhood will be safe through the county's Measure H return. I think that should be a high priority for the council. The money is there. All we need is the will to house a number of people. We can do this. And really collectively, I think we all know we need to. And we need to show results very quickly.
I believe homelessness is a regional issue. We can't really solve it just by ourselves. As a member of the board of directors of Upward Bound House, I know what it is. I know how families can become homeless. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she's like, we don't really like to be called homeless. We'd rather be referred to as people experiencing homelessness. It makes it more human to her. And she explained this to me, and it's like it really hit home. They want to be people first. If you really take the time and talk with them, they are people, and that's all they want. They want that interaction. They want somebody to come up to them and say, hey, how you doing? For the most part, the ones that I've spoken with that are homeless say people avoid them. They avoid all kinds of eye contact because they're afraid they're going to be panhandling or want money or want something. A lot of them just want that human connection that they so much want, they need. I think really in terms of regionally, we need to work with the county. We need to get money. We need to get organizations. We need to get help for them. LA County has a system, 211. So you can call it. If you see somebody homeless out on the street, call 211. Report the location. And there's services out there. There's things out there where we can do. I think homelessness starts individually. What we can do as a person, and then we attack it regionally. I would love to see more Upward Bound facilities in Culver City. We're working on another 2 locations. Hopefully we can secure them and really expand our reach through the city. But more so than that, yeah, it's a regional problem, but what I'm saying is they're human. Take the time sometime, just talk to somebody that's on the street homeless and get to know them. You'd be surprised how they can really enlighten your day. I know they have for me.
Okay, thank you. And we now have another question that someone from the audience brought in earlier this evening. The City Council passed a smoking ban on multi-unit complexes without any enforcement mechanism. What will you do to give this ordinance more teeth? I think we're, yeah, okay. No, Mr.
Oh, really? I don't think so.
I'll take it. I think the laws are only good as they're able to be enforced. I'm just taking it. Nobody.
Well.
No.
Okay. All right.
If we have laws in the book that aren't enforceable, what's the purpose of having them in there? We really need to think wisely and thoughtfully about our laws. With the general plan coming up, we can really address a lot of these issues, a lot of these laws in the book that don't make sense or that aren't enforceable. If they are unenforceable, why do we have them on the book? And if they are necessary on the book, then how are we going to get the money to enforce them? We really need to look long and deep into that and really go through everything one by one. But in terms of no smoking ban and enforcement, it's like I said, it's no good unless somebody really enforces it. So we really have to look hard and deep into enforcement issues and how we can get the proper enforcement to handle the laws on the books.
Regular order, yeah.
All right, you bring it back in order. Sorry about that. When the smoking ban was approved by council, I think we all knew that there was no enforcement mechanism other than homeowners association. You either talk to your neighbor or give them warnings or bring a civil suit against them to try to get them to stop smoking in the unit. It's not practical. It's not realistic. I mean, there's acrimony with neighbors, then you throw that into the mix, you got a problem here. So, you know, sometimes the regulations that council comes up with, we need to really think about how practical it really is, other than maybe just feeling good. Buildings is healthy for anybody? Not at all. It's not. But if we feel strongly about this, and there are other things we can think about, there needs to be a mechanism to enforce it. And that mechanism to enforce it generally is going to cost money. So it needs to be funded. Or sometimes we need to step back and say, is this really a priority, or maybe is the priority mitigating some of the traffic woes of Fox Hills? That costs money too, but maybe we could get some things like that done.
I think one of the things that may be going on here is the particular nature of smoking. If there's in the absence of some ordinance, we're left with dealing with neighbors in a closed space plus a homeowners association. Homeowners associations are, I mean, I don't have to tell you. And one of the things I would like to do that I haven't gotten a chance to talk about that I think is relevant to Fox Hills is I think there needs to be sort of a one-stop shop where people can consult in some of the smaller units with city staff on best practices. What's the best earthquake insurance? What should we be thinking about? You know, so it's something to serve homeowners associations, because you have a lot of responsibility as a homeowners association member, and sometimes you're sort of out there on a high road without a lot of help. So that's neither here nor there. My suspicion is that ordinance was passed because people wanted a little pressure release valve. And this is really sort of a scream or die concept, right? If somebody's smoking is not a problem, if either there's no sensitive person nearby, or if they're hermetically sealed smoking chamber, it's not going to be a problem. If there is a problem, calling the police department to come out and do a little citation is a lot less painful and anonymous than going to your homeowners association. So I think I would maintain the scream or die concept, and it's one of the difficult things of living in a group of people.
Yeah, I would actually sort of advocate personally for more personal education from people in Fox Hills on this particular issue, because I am a renter and I live in an apartment, but I live in Clarksdale, and one of the issues that we have is barbecue grills between apartment buildings that are very close to each other, and the smoke that people have to suffer through in that context. On the one hand, I'm from South, I love to barbecue, it's gonna happen. But on the other hand, if I have a neighbor who has a young child, or if I have an elderly neighbor who deals with the asthma, I want to know about it, and I want to do whatever I can to make sure that my activities do not disrupt that. I think in general, in other larger municipalities, they have numbers that you can contact for less urgent emergencies. But we already have a contact method on our Culver City website. I've reported neighbors for doing construction after 9 p.m. before myself. So that is already in place. That's one venue that we can use to report these types of things. If that's not effective, then we need to know that. One, we need to know, has this venue been actually used? Has it been ineffective? If it has, then what else can we do to make it more effective? I think a lot of cities have been creatively using social media to address some of these issues and to identify some of these issues. So I think that's one thing to look into. But I think if we pass regulations, specifically of this sort, we have a police department. That is their job, to enforce these types of regulations. I don't think we need to add other layers. I think we just need to use the system that is already in place.
Okay, thank you all. And I think we can all give them our candidates a round of applause. And now we're going to give each person a chance to have the last word, 90-second closing statement, and we'll start at the end with Mr. Higgs. I guess we're starting the same place.
Yeah, we are. That's fine. Thanks everyone for coming. It's a very well organized forum. Plus, it's almost like Swiss timing, and we're getting out of here at the time you promised. So that's always cool. All the forums in a way are kind of the same. Some are more better organized than others, but they're always kind of like the same. There's issues. The audience asks questions. We respond to the issues. Sometimes you like the response, sometimes you don't. I kind of look at it that, for myself personally, I'd like to know what the candidate's philosophy is in dealing with matters. Because at some point, if I'm elected or anyone's elected, whoever's elected, we're going to deal with, at some point, with issues that were not any of the issues that we discussed today. There's probably going to be new issues, different issues, some that are higher priority than whether it's a smoking type of thing or enforcement or whatever the case might be. My philosophy is I come in dealing with an issue. I try not to have any predisposed idea or decision. I want to hear counter arguments to from where I think my mind is going. The key is listening. And having these counter arguments allows me to make an informed decision, probably the best decision possible, that I think.
I want to also thank you all very much. This is a very, very nice forum, and it's great to be in Fox Hills and to have learned about your community, and I love your park especially. I also know that as the campaign season is kind of warming up or heating up, there's been a little bit of negativity out there, and I'm confident that none of it's from the campaigns. I know it's not coming from my campaign, but I want to take the opportunity and sort of the soapbox to tell my supporters to focus really on the positive reasons to vote for me. It just makes sense anyway, because you get 2 votes. So, you could focus on the fact that I went to UC Berkeley and graduated with honors from political economy of industrial societies with a focus on cities. So I've been thinking about cities for 20 years, 25 years. What happened? What happened? I went to UCLA Law School and graduated in the top 10 of my class, focusing on business and corporate finance. Then I clerked for a Ninth Circuit judge and dealt with all sorts of different legal problems, all the way from immigration to Tennessee Valley Authority cases and Indian law cases. Or the fact that I was a partner at a law firm for a number of years and managed to start a family, buy a home, remodel a home while doing that. And that I was a founding director at a nonprofit that's operating field schools all over the world right now in archaeology and other anthropology, archaeology and other anthropology. Or the fact that I received a commendation from the County of Los Angeles for providing pro bono services to Dee Dee Hirsch in acquiring a new mental health facility. Or the fact that I'm currently a Deputy Attorney General with, I think all of these experiences make me well suited to serve, and I would really love to serve. Sorry. Thank you.
Sit down. First of all, thank you, Elizabeth, Judy, and New Song Church for really hosting this event. And more importantly, thank all the residents for coming out this evening and trudging through this with us all. I hope by the end of this evening, through our conversation, you learned a little bit more about me. I learned a little bit more about the issues up here in Fox Hills. Like I said, I'm running for council because I care about my community. I care about every part of my community. I think with the store that I have, it gives me a unique opportunity to really reach out and to touch every member from the community. You know, people come in the store all the time. Hey, Albert, I got this tree over on my block on Lincoln, or I got this, or I got that. Ooh. And just that community sense that I feel through the store and that connection through the community, I want to give back. I want to share. Am I the perfect candidate? No, I'm not the perfect person whatsoever. I had my hiccups along the way, but through that, it made me the strong person and determined person, and the person that's willing to serve this community the best way I can. Willing to learn, willing to get in there and roll up my sleeves and get dirty with everyone just to do the best for the community that I possibly can. So hopefully April 10th, you get out and vote for me. Thank you very much.
So just to reiterate, my name is Daniel Lee, and I would like your vote on April 10th. Also, I'm running for city council. I don't know if you know. I appreciate having this forum tonight. I appreciate the increased activism of Fox Hills in general in the last few years. I hope I don't waste my time too much, but before I get to my little wind up, I really want to say that I hope within the next city council election that we have a candidate or two from Fox Hills. I've seen a lot of people really passionately involved in issues in Fox Hills for the last few years, and I think to make the city truly representative, I think having not just someone who speaks truth to power, but someone who is serving in that position would benefit Fox Hills in general, but would also benefit the city. To briefly wind up, I'm happy to have the endorsement of Congresswoman Karen Bass, the LA County Democratic Party, the Culver City Democratic Club, the Sierra Club, many other civic groups, Vice Mayor Thomas Small, Council Member Megan Solly-Wells, my passionate campaign managers, Michelle Weiner and Disa Lindgren, who, if you are active in this community at all, you cannot not know. I come from a background of service. I'm a veteran, I'm an activist, I'm a social worker, and I would be incredibly happy if you would choose me to serve you on April 10th. Thank you.
Thank you all for participating this evening, and thanks to Fox Hills Neighborhood Association.
I think we should get the Emmy for the best forum so far, okay? But we can hang around a little bit if you want to talk to the candidates, if they want to stay. Here already, right? Yeah. And there is campaign materials outside. And again, the voting materials are outside. The main thing is you just got to vote and grab all your neighbors to vote as well. Thank you so much, and thank you, New Song.